This evening, we want to look at Pilate, Pontius Pilate. And my temptation is, why don't you look at the crowd before you look at Pontius Pilate? But I think it doesn't really matter. We can look at either at any point in time. Of course, like we know, it's almost impossible to look at any one character in isolation. So as we look at these characters, we definitely will talk about others. And so this evening, we're looking at Pontius Pilate. I need to quickly, so that I don't forget, give credit to Pastor Taiwo Osho. When he learned that I was studying on Pilate, he shared a material with me. And the material he shared with me, I would not have noticed it if he didn't share it. And I will share it with you in a bit as we look at Pontius Pilate. The story of Pontius Pilate tells us that with regards to the person of Jesus Christ, you cannot be neutral. No. Every one of us must take a stand. And we take this stand daily. We take this stand for our lives. We must all take a stand. And funny enough, even if you decide not to take a stand, you are taking a stand already. So as we look at this character around the crucifixion of Christ, Pontius Pilate, we're seeing a man that came into the scene. Now, you know, in our study, we've looked at people who just came into the scene of the story of Christ, unlike the disciples who had walked with him for 3.5 years, and people who just appeared in the scene and disappeared. And so we see another person who appeared most likely for about 4 hours in this Christ event, Pontius Pilate. He comes in and plays his very crucial role. Very crucial role. And he disappears into the scene. Who is this Pontius Pilate? By the way, we have historical records about him, extra-biblical records. And one of the records we have is by that great Jewish historian by the name of Josephus. And through historical records, we got to know that Pontius Pilate basically, accidentally became governor of Judea at the time he became governor. Now, we need to know that at the time of Christ, the promised land was divided into 3 regions. You had Judea, that's where you had Jerusalem. You had Samaria in between. Now, please, I'm not good in geography. Which one? But Judea was somewhere. Samaria was in between. And then you had on top Galilee. Now, so Jesus was from Galilee. He ministered a lot in Galilee. Most of his disciples were from Galilee. Samaria was occupied by the Samaritans, who were neither here nor there, not Jews, not Gentiles, but of course they were adulterated Jews. And then you had Judea, where you had the temple, where you had the rulers. And so Pontius Pilate was the governor over Judea. He became governor at about AD 26. And he was governor for about 10 years. Pontius Pilate was appointed by the emperor Tiberius to be the governor or the procurator or the prefect of Judea. He served, and at the time he served, he was also reporting to another governor, Governor Vitellius, who was governor of Syria. Despite the fact that he was reporting to Governor Vitellius, he had independence to take decisions on his own. And so, Pontius Pilate was one who had lots of controversies. And I'm thinking that some of the decisions he made, most especially with regards to Christ, were decisions that were colored by the controversies around him. According to Josephus and other Jewish historians, after Pontius Pilate became governor, now before he became governor, there's this Roman standard, which for us would be like a flag or emblem of the Roman government, that any territory you conquer, which is still in place today, you conquer a territory, one of the first things you do to establish your authority is you put your flag. And so the Jews, of course, because of the commandment, most especially the second commandment, not to worship any idol, not to bow down to any graven image, had resisted anything like that. And governors before Pontius Pilate had respected their wish and had not brought in any standard. Now, one of the reasons why they even rejected the standard was because it had the image of the emperor. And so, when he became governor, Pontius Pilate tried to get his troops to sneak the standard into Jerusalem. And there was serious protest. When the protest was on, Pontius Pilate threatened to send in the troops to kill protesters. And the Jews told him, they dared him, send in your troops. They were prepared to be martyred. And so, he withdrew. Also, there was problem with water in Jerusalem. And Pilate thought to himself to build an aqueduct. Now, he was building the aqueduct for the people so that there will be water supply. In building the aqueduct, Pilate took from the temple tax. Taking from the temple tax, the Jews revolted, they rioted. And he also sent in troops. And some of them were killed. Of course. In addition, we will find in Luke chapter 13 verse 1. Luke 13 verse 1, the record. It says, now there were some present at that time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. So Pilate was one who was practically a man of controversy. And we would get to know that later on, after the death of Christ, after the death and the resurrection of Christ, the rule of Pilate came to an end abruptly as well, because there was another riot, and this time it was the Samaritans that were killed. And of course, they reported him to Vitellius of Syria, and he was sent to Rome to go and answer for what he had done. As we look at the stories around the role of Pilate in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, I'm tempted for us to read the Gospels, because most especially as you read Matthew, Luke, and John, you have some insights that you have that this person has, this person didn't put. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 27. Matthew 27. Let's begin to read from verse 11. Matthew 27 from verse 11. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, that's Pilate, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. When the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of selfish interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hand in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." Was he innocent? All the people answered, "His blood is on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed over to be crucified. Let's look at Luke 23. Luke chapter 23. We can begin actually from chapter 22. Luke chapter 22 from verse 16. No, sorry, that's 16. Thank you very much. From verse 66. Luke 22 from verse 66. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "I tell you, If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God. They all asked, "Are you the Son of God?" He replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man, number one, subverting our nation. Number two, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar. And number three, and claims to be Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted. Number 4 accusation, he stirs up people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he heard that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, Herod was the governor of Galilee, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Because before this, they had been enemies. May God keep your enemies as enemies. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him." But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Let me just quickly pause and go back to the insurrection. You had people who were against Roman occupation, and the zealots were part of them. They were militant Jews. Barabbas was one who was an enemy of Caesar, an enemy of the state. But at this point, the people felt he should be the one released. And Jesus, who was now being accused of being an enemy of the state, should be crucified. Verse 20, wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again. But they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time, he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and release him." But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. Okay, finally, we'll read from John chapter 19. John 19, but we'll pick it up as well from verse 18. John chapter 18 from verse 28. John 18:28. When the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor, then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now, it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanliness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Then take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your idea? Your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests have handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now, my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then?" said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at a time, or at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now, Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in purple robe and went up to him again and again, "Hail, King of the Jews." They slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns, the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to the law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid. Okay, that means Pilate had been afraid. He was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you really realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You will have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat on the judge's seat at a place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. Gabbatha, that is the one that I said Pastor Taiwo taught me. It was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king? Pilate asked. We have no king but Caesar. The chief priest answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. Pilate had a most difficult choice to make. Pilate was in the middle between the Jewish leaders, the crowd on one side, and Jesus of Nazareth on another side. And Pilate had this decision to make. And like we read a moment ago, he had the seat of decision, Gabbatha, where he sat and made the decision. The truth is, every one of us, we sit on Gabbatha. Whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, we have judgments to make. Judgments to make about the Christ. And judgment to make about the crowd. Oh, I pray that in your heart, in your life, in every situation, you will always judge him faithful, and judge him Lord, and judge him King, and judge him as Lord of your life and my life all the time. We can see the struggles that Pilate had. When he encountered Christ, he knew that there was nothing about this man that deserved death. He knew this was an innocent man. But Pilate was the kind of judge that could not take decisions for himself. He knew the right thing to do. He was not confused about it. He had enough revelation. And that's the truth. If any man goes to hell, nobody goes to hell because you didn't know the right thing. Whoever goes to hell goes because the person deliberately rebelled against God. And in basically decisions we take in life, God gives us enough light. Pontius Pilate had enough light. Okay? When he realized this was a difficult decision for him, he felt it would be easier. Did you say he's from Galilee? Then let us hand him over to the governor of Galilee to decide. Jesus got to the governor of Galilee. That one said, sorry, the crime did not take place in my region. He was arrested in your region. It's your decision to make. The decision came back to Pilate again. And you can see the struggles of Pilate. This man is an innocent man. Crucify him. Even Pilate's wife had sent to Pilate. This man is innocent, oh, leave him alone. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Release him. Let him go. And did you catch that? Pilate even talked to Jesus, told Jesus, Jesus, do you know that I have the power to free you? Some few things I think we can learn. Number one, Pilate had an opportunity to do the right thing, but he did not. He had an opportunity to release Jesus, but he did not. I pray when you have opportunity to take the right decision, you will do so. Pilate knew what they wanted him to do was wrong. He knew he had to choose between Jesus and the crowd. He chose the crowd. Like I said earlier on, Pilate had enough warning. His wife will warn him as recorded in Matthew 27:19. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man. For I have suffered a great deal today in my dream because of him. Pilate still was so pushed, or he pushed himself and condemned an innocent man. Sorry, can I ask a question? Have you ever passed judgment on somebody before and realized that you were wrong? Huh? You had gotten information, quote and unquote, that was authentic information, and you stood by it. I know if this information is coming from Tom Takpatore, then there is no way it can be wrong. Only to find out that you were wrong. Pilate was motivated by selfish reasons. The fear for his position. The fear of the Jews. He didn't want to lose his position. They told him, if you release him, we will report you to Caesar. Then you are not a friend of Caesar. I'm sure you know that it's not only teenagers and children that have to do with peer pressure. Are they the only ones? No, we all have to deal with peer pressure. Funny enough, let me share with you little I know. Men have to deal with peer pressure a lot. There are men who are social smokers and drinkers. They don't smoke, they don't drink ordinarily. But when they go clubbing with friends, everybody is holding a stick. It must not be seen that me too, I'm not holding stick. Everybody is taking, me too, I'm taking. There are men who are social adulterers. I'm sure they still do it. You know, there are parties that men pay to enter, but women enter free. Abi? They still do it. Sometimes, ladies are imported from universities and are taken. Somebody is celebrating birthday. They are doing their birthday in London, in Italy, in New York, and he's going with friends. Go with chartered flight. Of course, girls go free. And you know that there are nude parties. Big people, oh, top people, nude parties, and people just follow. With politics, you know the kind of dirty things that happen? Peer pressure. I'm wondering, do women go through peer pressures as well? Some are sure be that people buy. Now, what did they make them buy them? Is that not peer pressure? Some people don't have money to eat, to pay school fees. Some people are permanently in debt because anyone that comes, they will buy. And the funny thing is that most of the ashoebis that people buy, you wear it once and that is it. Peer pressure. All of us. Pilate could not resist. What will happen to you? People take decisions just based on everybody is going this way. I don't want to be seen not to be going. And some people are very good in blackmailing you. They will talk to you in such a way that you know it is wrong, but you follow them. They carry placard. Who must go? Ali? Okay. Ali must go. Everybody, Ali must go. What is the placard for? Who is Ali save you? I don't know how many of you lived in Lagos. If you live in Lagos, Lagosians now, okay. You know in Lagos, it is in Lagos that you see people going in a direction, all of a sudden you see one person turn. And what everybody begin to turn. You have run some distance, you now ask, what are they running from? May you not be led into evil. No matter what is causing the fear, no matter what you are going to lose. Some people are so afraid of their reputation. Some are afraid of what they will eat. Some are afraid of blackmail. They caught you sleeping with somebody, doing what you're not supposed to do, and they say they will blackmail you if you don't join them. The truth is, even if you join them, they will still blackmail you one day. It will come out. The same thing that Pilate was afraid of was what killed Pilate. Historians say Pilate even committed suicide. Pilate was, funny enough, Pilate was power drunk. If he was not power drunk, he wouldn't have told Jesus, you know that I have the power to control you. I can determine what happened to your life. In short, your life is in my hand. And I like it. Jesus said, you not get them. I lie. Stop deceiving yourself. Of course, it was power that made him to bow down to pressure. That made him to bow to the crowd. Because he felt he would lose power. He lost it. There was something I learned years ago about compromise. I can't remember if it was not Ora Robert Sr. that said it. He said, if you compromise to get anything, you will lose what you compromise to get, and you will lose a lot more. May God deliver us from the power of compromise in the name of Jesus Christ. Compromise will get you nowhere. Oh, Pilate wanted desperately to keep peace in the land, but he lost it. He murdered the Prince of Peace. Who was that person that murdered sleep? Hello. Something I learned from Pilate is that even if you don't understand, try to listen to family sometimes. So. Hello? Those of us who are men, we are more guilty than women. And please, I need to warn all of us men. The older we get, even women, the older we get, the more stubborn we become. Hello? So please, Because if Pilate had listened to his wife, he probably wouldn't have done what he did. Amen. Pilate was trying to pass the buck. Did you not try to pass the buck? Push Jesus to Herod. And when push came to shove, he said, bring water. I wash my hand. I remove my hand. I remove my leg. I remove my head. He removed them. Now who condemned Jesus to death? One other thing I think I learned is that sometimes the easy way may not be the right way and may not be the best way. Pilate had his time. He had his moment in history. He failed. It's now your turn. Enough about Pilate. How about you? Have you been failing God? What are you doing with the opportunities you have? Gabbatha. All of us. We will have opportunities in life to sit in judgment over the destinies of people. Oh, we have lots of retired people in church, and but we still have people who are not retired. But even the retired people, you will have opportunities to determine the destiny. You have opportunity to add a little bit of sweetness to somebody's life. What will you do? You will have opportunity to be light, to honor Christ in the family. When there's family meeting, when there are decisions to be made, I'm sure you've heard before that in places wherein widows are maltreated, sometimes it is church people that are leading the team. And can you believe it? Sometimes it's even women. It's women. We cannot take this in our family. Women. As long as we are on this side of eternity, God will place destinies in our hands. So it could be the destinies of grandchildren, destinies of neighbors, destinies of children, destinies of people. You may not even need to give money to somebody. It may just be an encouragement. You may be the last hope that somebody has. Oh, that indeed my life will bring hope to somebody. Oh, that indeed my life will bring encouragement to somebody. Oh, that somebody will go to bed tonight saying, Lord, thank you. Thank you for Tom. You are on the seat. And you know what? God gives us privileges to make decisions. Don't do it. God will raise up stones. But I pray that no stone will take my place. No stone will take your place. No, we must do the right, too. As we sit on Pilate's seat, we must do the right. Dear Lord, have we failed you? Have mercy on us. We come before you in repentance and asking that from today, you will help us to boldly do the right. Help us to drop any and everything that is evil, that is not of you, that does not promote the name of Christ. Help us, Father. Thank you, Father.